Welcome to Maine, we're stretched to the bone. Prices keep rising, the paycheck stays prone. Inflation keeps knocking, won't leave us alone. They're selling the lie, groceries climbing, the gas tank is low. The bill's hitting harder than snow, but silence still blankets the truth. Where does it go? They're selling the lie. Housing is gridlocked from Portland to the county. Workers commute far past what feels soundly. Talk of solution comes yearly, not loudly. They're selling the lie.
Welcome to the Muddy Waters Podcast, where Mainers tell their stories, unfiltered.
Good morning, Maine. I am Chuck Ellis, and you are watching the Muddy Waters Podcast. The Muddy Waters Podcast, as we all know at this point, exists to help the people of Maine better understand what's going on in our state through a variety of ways, but mostly through interviewing people from around the state in different positions, whether they're running for office, they're in office, or business owners, parents, people telling real stories from what's happening in our world and why people are doing what they're doing. Unfortunately, we have this thing called the media. The media's job is to inform the people on what's going on. Sadly, they don't really seem interested in that. They're a propaganda arm of the Democrat Party that's mostly focused on bad Trump, rather than actually telling people what's going on and helping people understand how important the things that are happening in their backyard is, much more so to their daily life than what's happening in Washington, D.C. And so we try to highlight what's actually happening in our world and people who are impacting our world right around us. And that's why I'm really excited to have back with us again, although under a different name, Katherine Divine, also Kate Devine. Katherine, Kate, I'm not sure what to call you, but we'll call you both. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be back. And with the name, everybody gets confused. It's fine. People who've known me for a long time call me Kate, but my legal name is Katherine, so that's what appears on all my paperworks.
Yeah, I sometimes have the same problem because, like, I think my Facebook page is under Charles, but I'm Chuck is what most people call me, and so like legal documents I'll put Charles, and so anyway, it does confuse some people. I've been trying to more formally switch to Chuck to make it easier on people, but I'm not perfect. So, but yeah, and formerly known as Katherine Parker, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I got married 5 months ago now, and I do like to make that clarification because a lot of people have kind of been oddly accusing me of being dishonest about my name because it's two different things in a lot of different places, but people get married, and when women get married, they change their last names. There's nothing devious beyond that. It's just I settled down within the past year. Before I was more well known for what I was doing, I'd kind of taken a break from politics and disappeared off the map, other than small projects here and there. And of course, my sister does her stuff, and people think that I'm her all the time. And then I got married, and my last name changed. So
you're not Christina Parker. You're Katherine Divine. Okay, just checking.
People will very confidently walk up to me and go, Christina, and I'm like, nope. Still no.
Yep.
Happens a lot.
Fun. Well, obviously, for those who are regular watchers of this show, you were on, over a year ago, I would say at this point, or somewhere around there, telling
June, I think.
Okay, yeah. So telling your story in connection to what happened when you were a student, and just in general, what your experience has been with politics and also faith. It was a fun episode for sure. And if you haven't seen that, I highly recommend going back and watching it. You can find it on all of the places where my podcasts are, but the easiest would probably be muddywaters.us, where you can see all of our podcasts, or most of them are probably going to be on YouTube. There are a few that are not. But either way, that's what I recommend. But yeah, so now you're coming back on because in addition to having gotten married, you're looking to get involved, in politics in a more, I don't know if we'll call it substantive way, but like you're looking to do a crazy thing, I guess, and run for office in one of the more challenging cities in our state.
Yep, I pulled out the paperwork about a month ago to run for city office. Goodness gracious, for city council, under the encouragement of my church, definitely. To start out with, they needed more conservatives, and we definitely needed more Christians. And I was pretty what people would calling a prime candidate because I have recently in my life devoted myself to the Lord, but even before that, I was very deeply involved in politics. And I'm sure you know, my mother was on the select board for a number of years, and my stepfather is still on the city council or town select board of Sydney, Maine. So I don't have my own experience, but I've learned quite a bit through that and activism, which I'm hoping that my history of activism will kind of show the people that I'm not just all talk. I've been doing this for a while now. I've Googled it too. You can trace my testimonies for stuff back till I was 12 years old, uh, for against bills in the Capitol, and I wrote my own testimonies so nobody could accuse my mother of indoctrination or whatever. Um, and so it has been a challenge because I am young, and people, when you say that you have more experience than your age kind of portrays, people don't usually believe you. But that's where I'm standing now, and it was really just everybody in my church talking about we need more conservatives, but it seemed like not as many people were really stepping up as I had wished. And it's like, well, if you want something to change, then you have to be the one to change it. And since then, it has evolved. My motivation for running for council has evolved because now I'm a mom. And, oh, yeah, okay, surprise. And I'm going to have a kid here in 4 months or 6 months. And this is not a city where I want to raise my son, because I'm reading in the newspaper about the town next over where a 3-year-old was stabbed in the foot by a needle that was out at the Brewer Riverwalk, which is a public place where kids and elderly are out taking strolls on nice days. And we can't have that. Like, I grew up in a place where I could run around barefoot in those types of places. And kids can't be kids if we're scouting and worrying about needles everywhere. So it's become less of a call of duty and more of a personal passion that I can't, if I'm going to live in this city with my son and the rest of my family, I can't have these ineffective things in place where clearly what we're doing in Bangor is not effective in any way. There's no self-accountability for any of these people that we're placing in all these homes. We're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. Maine was given, or the city of Bangor in itself was slated to receive $4.36 million in the national opioid settlement funds. And we've used that money in all the wrong places. And I'm very much like to change that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because like all of our major cities are dealing with this, this similar issue, right? I had one of the candidates for state senate on here a little while ago, Rin Sol, and she was sharing her story of like being in Lewiston and has a family member who unfortunately passed as a result of addiction related to them giving out free needles and all that other kind of stuff. So this is a problem, and like there are a couple of different levels or layers to it for sure, but it doesn't seem like what they're doing is working, and yet they don't seem to be interested in making any changes outside of somehow like tax people more and give more money and give more stuff away, but not changes that are substantive and actually like making a difference at reducing all these, like, they call them harm reduction strategies, right? And yet somehow they don't reduce harm. In fact, but they tend to create less safe streets and situations for law-abiding people. It's kind of interesting because Bangor is a city that, I think it was in 2024, elected both a murderer and a communist, somebody who literally was a communist, or is a communist. Maybe they aren't officially a communist right now, but was literally a member of the Communist Party. That's the city that you're talking about. And that makes sense when you think about, like, the ideology that leads to this nonsense, which is, you law-abiding citizen. Oh, it sounds like there's a
Sorry.
disturbance.
I live in Bangor.
That's right.
That's like my whole. I live. I can see the fire department from where I live, and the police station is like right over there. So I get all the traffic.
So yeah, it's unfortunately lots of that when you're living in the city. But either way, like these communist ideology, which effectively, like Marxism, almost, this is a really poor description of Marxism, but generally speaking, if you are more disadvantaged, if your life is more difficult, then everybody else needs to bend to your will in order to be able to help you, because life is more difficult for you. So for instance, law-abiding citizens, well, they have it easy. They've got jobs. They can pay for their stuff. This poor homeless person who is addicted to drugs, they're the most disadvantaged because they're stuck in that addiction and they can't get out of it. So we all need to bow down, bend over, and just help them at the expense of all of the law-abiding people, because it's easy. Life is easier for us. It's a twisted ideology, but that is it's one of the core elements, I think, of Marxist thought. And how that's kind of prevailing. And so that's where it's like, if you start talking about we need to get these people off the streets, it's like, well, you don't love these people. It's like, I think we need safe streets, don't we?
I think I have a different version of love than people have come to expect. My husband just texted me, told me to close the windows, but joke's on him. I don't know how, because he's got them all set up. I hope you get to meet my husband at length. He's great. But my version of showing love to these people, again, it's different than the left kind of understands their version of love to be. And the funny thing is most people in Bangor that I've spoken to actually agree with me. It's mostly the college students, the people my age, that do disagree with me on a level. I found it's mostly Maine students as well. I'll get texts from people in going to the University of Augusta. But the way I see it, and Travis Carey has spoken on it many times. I don't know if he's been on here yet. He has his own podcast now, but
he's above me at this point. I'm just kidding. But he came on a couple last like, I don't know, March or February, something like that.
Yeah. But his testimony is it's more extreme than mine, but somewhat similar. He was a heroin addict for 15 years, where I was marijuana and alcohol for quite some time. And he was thrown in jail for an extended period of time. And he says without that, he'd still be on heroin or dead, because he was placed in a secure place where he couldn't get out and go get more drugs, and was forced to sober up. And once he had that kind of clear mind and was able to hear from the Lord again, that's when he got out of his addiction. So my version, and seeing this and going through it myself, I went through Blessed Hope. They don't let their girls drink or have drugs in the house, or even nicotine. Girls would be busted with vapes. You couldn't even have those. And that's how you get out of addiction. You stay away from it entirely. Yeah. But the residents of these facilities and these housing developments, they don't have those rules. They can do whatever they want. Like, oh, we feel bad for you, so we'll give you a house, but we're not going to put rules and guidelines in place to actually help you get out on your own. So, and I spoke on that last night at a town council, or sorry, small town girl over here, on a city council meeting, and I asked, what are the requirements to receive these assistance? Will you have to be working towards sobriety or have already achieved it? Or is there going to be an expectation to secure and maintain employment? Is there an individual accountability? Because it's all good and fine to give these people all this stuff and spend all this money on them, but you're not helping them get on their own feet, so they're just going to end up right back where they were in the beginning. And I have kind of that tough love experience of, no, we're not going to give you a handout. We'll help you get a job. We'll help you find somewhere where you can sober up. But if we just keep giving them money, they're just going to be reliant on the system for the rest of their lives. And that's kind of the problem I have with welfare. We're not helping these people in the long-term sense. We're just putting a band-aid on it. And most people at this point agree with me. Even like people will ask me if I'm a Republican, and I'd been advised by some people who are still in politics that I shouldn't tell people I'm a Republican, but I believe in transparency, so I do. And then they won't support me, but they'll say, wait, but we can agree on this. This isn't a party issue. This is a clearly what we're doing isn't working. We need to take a tougher approach. Or even one woman who all I had to say is, I'm just a mom trying to make a better world for my son. But it's not that we're not loving these people. It's that we have a more mature outlook on what love looks like. Because I'm not going to let my son run into the street. And I might look a little mean to him, but in reality, he's going to learn you don't run into the street because you can get hurt. You know?
Yeah. It's interesting. I think there's this obvious gap between I think more liberal thought as it relates to helping people and conservative thought. Conservative thought says, I believe in you. I actually think that you can handle it. And I actually think it's in your best interest for you to figure out how to handle it. And I'm here to help you figure out how to handle it, but I'm not going to do it for you because that's not good for you. And it's not good for society because it actually turns into this thing called enabling. It's, if you want people to remain children for the rest of your life, then treat them like children. If you want people to grow up and become adults, you need to treat them like adults. And when they make poor decisions, you do not bail them out. Right? Because it's not good for them. They need to learn the consequences of their actions in order to have hope for them to get them out of their situation. And like this proves, I mean, I've seen this play out, and, with people in my life where, if you continue to help them, quote unquote, it's actually a form of bondage for them because it doesn't force them to figure their own stuff out. They can continue to rely on you, which means though they're beholden to you, right? And this is what the government wants. The big government wants you to depend on the government and therefore have to answer to the government, which is the opposite of how we tried to structure our society here, right? Which is that the government had limits on how it could impact our lives. But when the government is the purse strings, that's how we financially survive and this, that, and the other thing, then it can tell us how to live. And control us. So the conservatives are actually about empowerment, and the liberals are about slavery.
Mm-hmm. And that's brings me to another point that I made last night about the limits that we have on our governments here in the U.S. I have not been seeing those limits exercised in the current administration for the Bangor City Council, because they've been, even last week during an emergency meeting to discuss the Yellen Pines project, which is they're building an entire apartment building for homeless people who are at the most high risk, aka the people that are addicted to drugs. Again, they are not expected to sober up in order to move into these facilities. And the ones that have been homeless the longest, and again, they're not expected to get a job. But they held this emergency meeting to discuss that Yellen Pine projects, and it was going to be hundreds of thousands of opioid funds to fund that. And last meeting, they are supposed to open the floor to public comment before they discuss it, but they didn't. The people were ignored. And then afterwards, a Maine Wire reporter went around and asked, "Why didn't you open a public comment?" And nobody would answer. He goes completely ignored. And last night, I believe they tried to do the same thing where they kind of went to shuffle past public comment, but everybody had seen this kind of song and dance before and stood up and said, "No, you're going to let us speak." And I did as well. Not my best speech. It was very rushed, but I pretty much addressed most of the points that I've addressed previously. The only other one that I haven't mentioned is my worry that once these opioid settlement funds run out, which they will, the burden of supporting all these programs is going to fall into the taxpayer. And I already pay $900 a month for a teeny tiny apartment in downtown. So, not cool.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So, yeah, there, like, again, the solutions that are being this is what blows my mind about the current situation which we're at in our state, where we're fighting for I mean, we're fighting to save our state. And the solutions that conservatives have are real solutions that are actually focused on helping people and creating a better society. And it's like, if you're actually doing any academic research into the results, and academic, I don't mean like listening to the elites tell you things, but I mean doing research, data-based research on what actually positively impacts people's lives. Like it's actually incredibly obvious that we're on the right side of history, and yet we're having to fight to convince average people of the reality of the situation. And a lot of it is that people are being manipulated, obviously very manipulated and twisted by, like, this is why I highlight the propaganda arm of the Democrat Party, which is the mainstream media, because this is the problem. They control the flow of information. And so many people, unfortunately, there are so many what sometimes we call normies, but just normal people who are like not wanting to be engaged in politics. They just want to live their life. And so many of these people have not yet realized, they've not been not black pilled. Was it red pilled? They've not been red pilled yet, and realize, Matrix reference, but and realize like what's actually happening in our world, and that the like all of our institutions have been co-opted by political actors, and most of them just trust that. Sure, they might believe that CNN and MS Now, I guess, and Fox, they'll say that those organizations are very politically, slanted, but they'll believe that, like, the BDN or the Portland Press Herald or the local television stations are actually informing the people. They trust those organizations, ABC, CBS, NBC. They don't realize the depth of the corruption that exists within our society at this point, and we have to convince them of what, if they just took some time and did some research, they would be able to see with their own eyes.
I would agree with that. And the Bangor Daily News is I'll give it to John to put it in the wood stove. Like, it's nonsense. It needs to be burned. It's so bad. But they have recently been releasing stuff of, like, kind of calling out their own side. It's kind of funny. They released an article last spring about the city council spending $375,000, and that's a low number compared to what it actually is, because we've spent at least that since then. And they're like, and they have nothing to show for it. All that money spent with nothing. Excuse me. But I do agree that most, because the Bangor Daily has been known to kind of, like, they'll praise Janet Mills and Graham Potner and whatever, but they have been kind of calling out their own side lately, because I think they realize that people are waking up, so to speak. Like, I've spoken with Democrats, and again, I've flipped their vote just by saying, we might not agree on social issues, and some of them look at my Facebook page, which is always fun. But we do agree on this, that our city is not safe, and Bangor City Council is not doing anything about it. And I think that the more that we hold those big media corporations accountable, the more we'll kind of see that shift of calling out both sides, even if they're still calling out conservatives more.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it feels a little bit more like, so I've had some interactions with the media, and I feel like they have fairly and accurately quoted me. So I do feel like there is some, I think it might have a little bit to do with the fact that, there is a Republican president and people are afraid of power. Maybe not, I'm not sure, like, but
WNBC quoted me fairly last year, I think.
I think this is part of what it is. I think here in the state of Maine, there was a question or is a question about who's going to end up being in power at the end of this election cycle. And so I think the media is being a little bit more cautious because they in Maine, and maybe I'm wrong, but like that's kind of been my experience. But either way, I would love it. The reality is, like, I would prefer not to be here, not to be doing a podcast, just to be out working a job, make money, taking care of my family, not engaged in politics at all outside of voting, right? And like if the media would actually just do its job, then I would be able to do that, right? So that's what I would prefer, right? But they're like, so if they move back into a direction where they're actually like more unbiased, and I remember when I ran for office in 2022, for instance, we got these questions from like the Portland Press Herald on, they wanted to do their comparisons of all the candidates, right? But the only questions that they would ask were ones that were obviously intended to make conservatives look stupid, right? It was like obvious from the questions because there were like 3 questions, and there were ones that were like asked. You can tell by like, do you believe that a woman has the right to choose, kind of thing, all the way up until birth? And they didn't say it like that, but like that's Maine's law now. But it was related to things like that. It was issues where they knew Roe versus Wade had just been overturned. This is a winning issue for the Democrats, so we're gonna talk about this. I think one was, do you think the 2020 election was stolen? Like it's like you're obviously just trying to like trap Republicans and conservatives and make them look stupid. This is your intention. And so like we didn't answer those questions. I was like, I'm not going to answer those questions because there's no way that it's going to help me win my race, which is what is I need to do as a candidate. I got to win in order to be able to positively impact the world. I had to win. This year, I actually have seen the questions that they're asking, and there aren't any of those like, gotcha, we're trying to make you look bad questions. It's like, what's your platform? What are you running on? And so it does seem like they're being a little bit better, which is good. I mean, this is what we should want in our society, is we should want a media that is just going to ask people who they are and why they're running and then publish that, right? And also one that is going to be critical of both sides. And they're not, even if it looks like they're being a little bit more critical of the Democrats, I don't see anybody asking, the Democrats suggest, for instance, that there are the problem, all the problems that are happening in Maine are all Donald Trump's fault. Despite the fact
they don't look at Janet Mills, yeah.
Well, but despite the fact, like, because of Iran, essentially, and oil, and that's what's driven up all the cost of energy, all this other stuff, which is it's just not true. But it also fails to recognize the fact that, okay, let's say there is an impact to those things. Why is Maine doing worse than the rest of the nation, right? Because there are 50 other states that are all under Donald Trump's rule. And if Trump is the problem, why is Maine doing poorly over against all of its neighbors? That is a local problem. And none of the media outlets. That's a simple question to say. You're saying we need to spend more money. We've increased the budget drastically over the course of the last 8 years. And you're saying that it's not Donald Trump, but Donald Trump has only been president for 4 of the last 8 years, or 6. No, yeah, 4. What am I talking about?
4. No, well, because Joe Biden,
for the last,
between his two,
right, my brain,
the dark ages.
So he's been there for 4 of the last 8 years, and prices continue to rise even when he wasn't president. So calling it Trump's fault is a little silly, obviously. So how do we identify what have we been doing wrong here in Maine that's leading us to be poor in education, poor in new businesses, the economy, no job growth, and they're not asking those questions because they're not that honest yet. They're trying to look honest a little bit here and there, but they're not there.
Yeah, I have looked into the education thing. Bangor high school students are not at a high school reading level by the time they graduate from Bangor High, and people say, "Oh, well, that's just a few outliers." And no, I used to be a trainer in retail, and I would get girls who didn't know the difference between a penny and a dime graduating here from Bangor High, and I'm wondering and the school budget keeps going up and up and up. What are we spending that on? Because we're clearly not spending it on our kids' education. And Bangor High School, once all the transgender stuff was going down, I sent out emails to the school board like, are you going to follow Trump's ban on it was like a ban on maybe a book or something. I don't remember. It was like 2 years ago now. And I asked about that, and they said, we're going to follow the state policy. And Janet Mills' state policy that was when she said, I'll see you in court to Trump over the don't trans the kids thing.
Yeah, it was probably the Title IX issue around boys and girls sports and spaces. Yeah.
So there was that, and I'm like, all right, so we care more about transing the kids than our own education. We care more about this, and I don't get into these social issues as much because I don't think it's beneficial to my campaign to talk about things that people aren't asking me about. But that is something that I want to bring back. Is I spoke with not going to say who it was but an official in our town, and he said that his very important part of our town has to be scrutinized on every aspect of their budget and has to do exactly what the town says, but the school board doesn't. The school board has their budget and they do their own stuff, and they just present the number or the general idea to the city council, and then nothing. Then that's their form of accountability. This is how much we're spending, and this is what we want you to prove. Well, I think that's ridiculous. What are they spending money on? What are we doing to help our kids learn in a way that's beneficial, that makes them productive members of society and not just robots with the taxpayers' money? Like, these people are sending their kids to school, they're paying their property taxes that go to the school, and they don't know what's going on. Parents are very misrepresented or underrepresented to the school board as well. We had a young man my age who's now running for city council. He ran for school board and was shot down because they said that he didn't understand what was going on or whatever they were accusing him of. But he seemed like a level-headed guy. But all the people that get elected to school boards are kind of in the same boat as the people who get elected to city council. So I don't think I would trust them to make their own budget without the input of other people. And I'd like to bring that accountability back, because I don't think that's not a Donald Trump problem. Like, spending money on that kind of stuff, things going up, that's a city problem. And people don't understand that most of the problems they see in schools and with our taxpayer money and with our energy costs, my husband will go on for hours about how corrupt and messed up the energy crisis is right now. But none of that is Donald Trump's fault. It starts at this city and the state and the counties and everything else. And as you pointed out, Maine's doing 10 times worse than most of the rest of the country. That's not Trump's fault.
Right.
But that's what the city council argues about, is Trump all the time.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's interesting too. And I pointed out recently that, like, the education side, right? Like, when you look at education adjusted for income, right? So, like, poverty, like adjusting for poverty, Mississippi is like the number 2 state in the nation when you adjust for socioeconomic status or whatever. Massachusetts, interestingly enough, is actually ranked, according to that study that I saw, number 1 in that category. So adjusted for, and Massachusetts is a Democrat-run state. So I want to point out that, like, I think there are probably serious problems in Massachusetts as well, but Maine is like, this is not just a Democrat Republican thing. This is a Maine Democrats are doing a terrible job, even against their peers, right? And so what we're focused on, what you're talking about here, holding accountable, and this is something that I don't know how aware people are, right? But the city council actually has to, and again, most towns and cities, the town council or whatever has to approve the school board budget before it then goes to voters. And so I think it is, so there is some accountability that the city council members can provide to the school board to ensure that they create a budget that makes sense for the people of the state, the people of that town. So I think I appreciate that you're going to keep that in mind as you're seeking to be on the city council. So outside of, you talked about a little bit about like just spending in general, but school boards, school spending, and then the needle problem. What are the other issues, or are there any other like major issues as it relates to, Bangor? I mean, it's probably in terms of public safety, the needle issue is and kind of like the unaccountability for homeless and drug addicted people those are probably the biggest issues. But are there any other issues? Because I'm not up in Bangor, so I don't know the issues that are facing Bangor outside of what I see on social media.
That's pretty much like when I go around talking to people and ask them what their issues are, that's pretty much all I've been getting, except for some snobby Maine kids ask me about different zoning laws. To that I say, I believe that there are restrictions that we need to put in place for certain things, but for the most part, I think we're putting too much red tape on people. But also, the only people that are complaining about Bangor's zoning laws are college students, which I find interesting. I don't know why, but I've talked to small business owners. That's not what they bring up. They bring up things like there's homeless people breaking into their stores. I was getting a tattoo at the Blind Faith tattoo shop. Shout out to Dom Bayou. He does a great job. And across the street, there was a window with a giant rock hole through it. And I asked what happened with that. And they said, oh, some homeless guy just broke in the other day. And that's pretty normal around here. That's what so people aren't as concerned with zoning laws unless you're an overeducated Maine kid. But, and they're more concerned with that. The other thing that gets brought up is the Bangor Mall. People are like, what are we going to do about that? And I did look into it a little bit. It is a private owner. That's an out-of-state private owner of the Bangor Mall, which probably doesn't help. Like that person that all the complaints are going to the city, but the city doesn't own it. And it's this out-of-state person who doesn't spend any time in Maine and sees all this, but it could be repossessed by the city, and I believe that it should, because the city's the one that's getting sued for all the car damage with the potholes. Like,
okay, I was going to say, what's the issue? What's the issue people are complaining about? But it's the parking lot?
It's the parking lot. It's the fact that when you go into the mall, somebody said that they got rained on when they
inside the mall.
Inside the mall, people like the giant food court with the glass ceilings that's leaking really bad. I guess all the stores in there, you can't bring kids in there. It's all adult content stores, and it's gross. It is nasty, and I wouldn't even want, like, if I bring my kid in there, I don't want him touching the floors or the walls or anything. It's nasty. Homeless people break into the stores and like stay there, and it's their store. All the stores are stuff left over, like Hot Topic and adult. I don't even. That stuff.
Interesting.
And then there's Dick's and J.C. Penney, I think, are the only two stores that people go into unless you're a sketcho. And so, and you can't. and it's leaking, and it's raining, and it's falling apart, and it's a health hazard, and it needs to be condemned by the city at this point, because whoever owns it isn't doing anything. I'm sure they're losing money at this point because nobody's going in there. Like, there's no Claire's anymore. There's no Build-A-Bear. There's no kid stuff. There's no normal mall stores that you'd see in Portland. It's all just these out of the box weird stuff. Oh, and like demonic, like, what are they called? Like with the crystals and the voodoo dolls and the whatever, those types of that type of stuff. So it's gross. It's a health hazard. It's falling apart. Some people have suggested turning it into more homeless housing, which I don't think would be beneficial. Maybe apartments if it was.
I think we give people housing without any accountability, and it will definitely help them no longer be mentally ill.
Seriously. I think maybe if they, I can't even say that they should turn it into apartments for even average people because it's falling apart. It's a health hazard. The last time I went in there, I thought the ceiling was going to collapse. It's not. It's one good storm and half that building's getting taken out. At this point, I don't know how it's lasted the winter. But and then of course the potholes. People have been suing the city because their fancy cars fell into these giant potholes and got smashed. I'm not a huge fan of cars that are only like an inch off the ground, but it's just ridiculous. Even my Jeep will go down and hit the ground if it goes in those potholes. It's pretty bad.
Rule of thumb: don't drive into potholes. But obviously, it sounds like there's some issues there that need to be addressed, and there are things I think that city government can do if it's gets bad enough. But obviously can't unilaterally they have to follow.
It is a private owner, unfortunately.
Yeah, which creates some challenges. But there are some things that probably could be done. Social pressure, but so those are the major issues, and probably taxes. Do people complain about taxes? I imagine.
Not as much as I expected them to. Energy prices, which they just built a giant solar farm near Cape Heart, which is a big waste of money and drives up costs in the long run because those batteries suck.
Not something you and the city council can deal with.
Yeah.
But that just gets
a drug and homelessness problem. That's
the major issue. It's hard to it's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like, maybe there are some other things, but until we get this, like the most basic thing of public safety and like homelessness and addiction, until we get that issue, which is kids getting children getting stuck with needles, like until that is fixed, I think nobody really cares about any of the other things. It's like which makes sense.
I mean, there's a few outliers that are like the bus system. People whine about the bus system. It doesn't run on the weekends. It only comes once an hour. But there's nothing. That's also not really a city thing because the only problem with that is we're understaffed. Like everywhere else in Maine, people don't want to work, so there's nobody that applies to work as a bus driver. So we don't have enough buses to run on the week. We don't have enough drivers to run on the weekend. So those complaints, we can't really. It's not really much I can do about it other than we'll try to hire more people because that's all you can really do. Somebody complained about the flavored tobacco ban in city limits. You can't sell flavored tobacco, which I listened and I said, you have a really good argument, but I personally don't like that we sell flavored tobacco as somebody who was addicted to nicotine at a young age. But again, but he did bring in a good point that we lost like 2% of our town revenue or something once that ban hit. Because a lot of convenience stores left because they couldn't sell flavored tobacco, I guess. Which, into those types of issues, I say, well, if you bring it before the town council, I'll make sure they don't shove you off. Like, we'll hear you out. We'll be fair. But it is just a lot of that kind of little things. And I've actually the flavored tobacco thing, I guess, is a big thing among, like, the 20s and 30s people, because it's been brought up 2 or 3 times now. But
Interesting. It's interesting to me because part of me says, like, well, I guess if it's demonstrated that they're using it to target people under the age of, I guess 21 now, which is silly to me, but I'm going to say 18 because I don't care. You can I think when you're 18, you should be able to drink and smoke and whatever. I don't think that's something that the government should be restricting for people who could go to war for this country and die. It's just weird to like restrict them on those issues, especially because like there's no evidence that I've seen. There are a bunch of other countries that allow people to drink and smoke at those younger ages, and I don't think has a terribly negative impact on their society. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. You can disagree with me on that. I'm not trying to change that law. But the idea of like restricting like what type, like the flavor in tobacco for people who like tobacco, I'm not interested. And I don't really care all that much, but part of like, it's my like freedom. Like, why should somebody who's 20, like whatever, a bunch of 20, 30, 40-year-old people like that stuff, why should they not be able to buy it? Because unless there's a demonstrated intention to target younger kids, which maybe there is, and maybe this is what's behind it.
Some studies say there is, some studies say there's not. It's a pretty up in the air issue.
Yeah. So anyway, that would be my major concern. So anyway, but yeah, so interesting stuff for sure. So we do have to wrap up because I got to get off to my next thing. But how can people help you? How can they find out more about you and your race?
We haven't I'm going to be working to launch a more I'm trying to create a website. I'm not very techie, and stuff like that, and that should be able to Google that type of stuff. I had a very deep conviction that until I'm actually have all my signatures in and I should be nominated, and I'm nominated, that I wasn't going to start collecting money from people. But now that that's kind of underway, I would like to, you need funding for this kind of stuff. So for now, if people like to door knock, message me on Facebook, because that's the biggest thing in Maine, really, is getting your name out, because people know me in this Waterville, Augusta area, but nobody knows me up here. So name recognition is a huge thing. Yeah. So the biggest ways that they can help is they can find you on Facebook. Katherine, is it Katherine or Kate on Facebook? Katherine Divine. Yep. Find her, friend her, send her some messages. And eventually at your website, your campaign page will pop up, and people will be able to follow you there. But for the meantime, it's there. And if you have any questions, obviously reach out to me. You can all find me, and I can get you connected. So thank you for coming on, Katherine. Thank you for being willing to run in such a challenging time, especially for cities like Bangor, and being willing to put your name out there and do what you can to try to make the world in which you're living a better place for everyone. And so, yeah, thank you so much. And thank you all for watching. And we'll be back here tomorrow with a candidate for district attorney. You'll find more.